Hello friends, this is Team SuperSimplified and today we are going to discuss Economic Survey 2016, Volume 1, Chapter 4. The title of the chapter is Agriculture, More from Less. So the main topic of discussion will be agriculture and the central theme of discussion would be more from less. So what do we mean from more from less? First of all, Economic Survey has given a lot of facts to prove that the productivity in Indian agriculture sector is very poor. So it is telling that the scenario is changing now and the productivity is very poor and we have to compete on an international scale. So we should focus on achieving more from less. See the productivity, what is the formula of productivity? Productivity is output divided by input, right? So in order to maximize the productivity, what you have to do? You have to decrease the input and you have to increase the output, right? So this is how we have to increase the productivity and this is how we have to attain more from less. So extract more even though you invest less. So extract more by investing less, right? So before getting into the actual chapter of economic survey, let's have some introduction about India and agriculture. So I have prepared some points which will throw some light on the relationship between India and agriculture and why agriculture is so important to India and what has been India's relationship with agriculture. So this is a statement which summarizes everything. This is a statement by Mahatma Gandhi. India lives in villages and agriculture is the soul of Indian economy. So if we talk about Indian agriculture, then we have to start from history. So agriculture is also mentioned in Rigvedic literature. They mention about the seasons, the types of soils, they mention about certain crops also. Then came the Indus Valley civilization where we have proofs that the rice and cotton was grown at that time and cotton was known as Sindhan because of the Sindhu river and it was also exported to other countries. And then came the colonial period under British rule and the entire focus shifted to cash crops like indigo, tea, opium, etc. Right, and this was also a time when there was a fall of peasantry and there was hardly any focus given on the improvement of tools and techniques in the agriculture and to improve the farmers' income because of the zamindari system and other atrocities. The status of farmer was falling day by day. Then in 1947, India got independence and agriculture again became the prime focus. But the problem was that India was still highly dependent on foreign aid at the time for fulfilling its requirement of food grains. And then in 1962 and 1965, India saw two wars with China and Pakistan. And India was importing wheat and food grain from certain other countries like US, and there was a lot of international pressure on India to act in a certain way because of these dependencies, and there was a threat to food security of the nation. That is when India was actually pressurized to think seriously about the food security of the nation and becoming self-sufficient in the farm sector. And then Green Revolution started in 1966-67, and the aim of this project was to attain self-sufficiency in this sector, and today we are a net exporter in certain agricultural commodities. Now if you talk from the pure economics perspective, then agriculture contributes only 15% to the GDP, and this graph shows sector-wise contribution to GDP of India from 1950 to 2014, and we have plotted three sectors: agriculture, industry and services. So agriculture is shown in red color. So you see during 1950s and the share of agriculture in GDP was 50%, and slowly it started declining and other sectors started picking up, and that is how the economy evolves. The primary sector contribution gradually reduces with time and secondary and tertiary sector take over. Then what is the importance of agriculture? The importance of agriculture comes from another fact, the fact that agriculture is the sector which provides 50% of the employment in India. If you talk about the international standing of India, then India ranks second worldwide in farm output, and it is the seventh largest exporter and sixth largest importer of agricultural commodities. So now let's start the actual chapter. So economic survey chapter 4 starts with this statement. It says Indian agriculture is in a way a victim of its own past success, especially the Green Revolution. So we have seen in the previous slide that Green Revolution was actually started as a project to attain self-sufficiency, and it was a resolution to the problem of the vulnerability of India because of the dependency on other countries for food grain stocks, right? But the success in Green Revolution also gave rise to certain problems. So we will see what are those problems which cropped up because of Green Revolution. So now we will discuss some of the problems which are believed to have originated from the Green Revolution. So because of Green Revolution, the entire farm sector has become cereal centric, right, and other crops have faced neglect. So now our farmers are increasingly getting focused towards wheat, rice, sugarcane and all these crops, right? Certain crops like oil seeds and pulses have faced neglect, and that is why there was a sharp spike in the prices of pulses recently, few months back, right? Another problem is regional bias because Green Revolution was mainly implemented in Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, right? these areas where the fertile land was available, and these areas were in a close vicinity of perennial Himalayan rivers, right? So farmers' income in these areas increased rapidly, whereas there were certain other regions like Telangana, Vidarbha, and all where farmers are still committing suicide. So the farmer in a particular region of the country is well off, whereas other is struggling. So the Green Revolution is also considered cause of this regional bias. Another argument is that the practice of agriculture has become input intensive because of Green Revolution, because a lot of fertilizer is required, a lot of water and land is required. So it has become resource intensive. So a lot of resources are required because the kind of seeds which were distributed during the Green Revolution were highly resource intensive, highly input intensive. So they increase the cost of production. They also put a lot of pressure on these resources, right? So basically, in light of these three problems, economic survey is justifying the statement that Indian agriculture is in a way a victim of its own past success. So Green Revolution was definitely a success, but also it has also given rise to certain problems, right? So now people are also increasingly talking about a second Green Revolution, right? But economic survey says that the time when the Green Revolution was implemented in 1966-67, and today a lot of things have changed, but we have not changed the tools and techniques which we use for farming and agriculture, right? But certain other things have changed. So what are those changes which have taken place? So let's see. So changes since then, since Green Revolution. So first of all, climate change has taken place, because of which cropping pattern is changing. Last 2 years we have seen low rainfall, right? So these are the changes which are happening in the climate, and because of that cropping pattern is also changing. And then second reason is the dietary pattern of the population is changing, because the income of the population is gradually increasing, because of which the demand for pulses is growing, right? And then rapid industrialization is taking place, because Indian economy is evolving. So a lot of resources are to be channelized from primary sector to the secondary sector. So a lot of rapid industrialization is taking place, and then some of the resources which are available, which are required for agriculture, like land, so they are becoming scarce, right? So this is also one of the change which is happening now. So these are posing some of the challenges in front of us, right? And what is the biggest challenge? The challenge is to adapt to these changes, and that too in a way where we achieve more from less. So the central theme of this chapter is more from less, and more from less is basically focused on productivity. So how to increase the productivity, how to reduce the level of input which is required to produce a certain crop, and how to increase the per hectare yield of that particular crop, right? Now let's see how Indian agriculture has evolved in the past. So this statement summarizes everything. So it says, from chronic scarcity to self-sufficiency and export capability, right? So earlier we were dependent on foreign aid, and now we have become self-sufficient. And not only that, we are also net exporter of agricultural commodities, right? So now let's do a reality check. Let's put things in perspective. So if you compare India with USA, then in 1966, Indian milk and wheat production was one third of USA, right? So this is what the scenario was at that time, before Green Revolution and White Revolution started, right? And now if you talk about 2013, then Indian wheat production is 60% higher than US, and milk production is 50% higher than US, right? So these are some of the results which were seen because of Green Revolution and White Revolution. Okay, so we can feel proud of these figures, but there's a catch, there's a problem. What is that? The picture across crops is full of contrast. So what is true for wheat and milk is not true for pulses and oil seeds, right? So this is the problem which we are going to discuss in this chapter. So there is a lot of bias in terms of crops also. Some of the crops which got a lot of focus during Green Revolution have they are becoming the prime focus of the farmers, and we are importing a lot of pulses from foreign countries still. The need of the hour is a rainbow revolution, where we will be focusing rationally on all the agricultural commodities. So it will be a kind of balanced development, and again an equivalent focus on more from less. Now let's come to the issues. Now let's see what are the basic issues which are faced by Indian agriculture sector. So we will be basically discussing four issues. First one of them is resource crunch. So what are the resources which are required for agriculture? First of all, land is required, and according to economic survey, the per capita availability of land, cultivable land, per person availability of cultivable land is reducing, because with every generation the land is getting fragmented. There's a person who has two sons, and then he'll distribute the land between them, and as this hierarchy goes on, the fragmentation of the land happens, and every person has a smaller a chunk of land, and then it is not feasible for him to invest a lot of technology and capital in this small piece of land, because he cannot get economies of scale. And availability of water is also reducing. Recently you have seen what has happened in Latur, right? We are sending trains full of water. There's hardly any water to drink, and we are talking about agriculture. So these are some of the problems which we are facing, and these are actually growing day by day. So our strategy towards making a roadmap for agricultural development should keep these things in account, right? Second issue is imperfection in MSP regime, minimum support price regime, and procurement policy. So what economic survey is telling is our MSP regime is actually skewed towards incentivizing the production of few specific crops. So the farmer is very happy and he feels very comfortable and safe because when he produces wheat or rice, because the MSP policy for these crops is very clear. So because of this bias between the crops, certain other crops like the pulses and oil seeds, they are suffering, right? Because farmer is not ready to take risk because he is highly dependent on monsoon. He doesn't have irrigation facilities, he doesn't have a good insurance facility, credit is not available. Okay, so those are some of the challenges because of which he feels very safe in producing wheat and rice, and because of that we have excess stocks of wheat and rice, whereas we are importing pulses from other countries, right? So this is how the MSP regime and the faulty policies of the government leading to some problems in agriculture sector. Then third reason is the backwardness of agrotech sector. So agricultural technology is not improving with time at the pace which is expected. So why this is not happening? Because we are lagging behind in the research and development sector in agriculture. The reasons are there are very few takers of agriculture education first of all, and there's a disconnect between lab to land. Whatever is happening in the lab in the universities is actually of academic nature, and they don't have a connect with the farmer and what are the practical issues which are being faced by them, and these practical issues are not the motivating factor for the experiments which are happening in the lab or the developments which are happening in the lab. So this lab to land or lab to farm disconnect is to be bridged. Fourth and the last region is market segmentation, and this is mainly because of the APMC Act, Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee Act. So because of this act, a certain farmer who is living in a particular area can only market his produce to the APMC committee there in that region. So because of all these skewed policies, what is happening is there's a large gap between farm gate price and the consumer price. So what farmer is getting is very less, and what consumer is actually paying is very high. So where is this price rise happening? That is because a lot of mediators are involved in between, and they are the people who are getting a major chunk of this profit. And because of this, both the farmer and the consumer are suffering. And this market segmentation is also responsible for low farmer income. And because of that, what is happening? Since the farmer income is low, he is not ready to invest more in technology, in tools and techniques of the modern era, or in the seeds, in better seeds, right? So this is a vicious cycle. He is not investing more, so productivity again goes falls, and then again prices will rise, and again his income is less. So this is a vicious cycle. Now let's see some of these problems with some facts and figures. So why more from less? Because there is a resource crunch, so we have to focus on more from less. And how do we know there is a resource crunch? So let's see this. So this graph actually shows per capita availability of arable land, and we are comparing three countries here: India, China and Brazil, from 1960 to 2010 in a span of 50 years, right? So the green line is Brazil, orange line is India, and the blue line is China. So if you see here, India is facing a sharp decline in the per capita availability of arable land. So this is the severity of this problem. Now let's come to the second one. The second important resource for agriculture is water. So if we talk about the per capita availability of renewable freshwater resources, so you can see a sharp decline in the per capita availability of renewable freshwater resources also for India. It is true for other countries also, but the decline is not that sharp for other two countries, right? And the problem of India is also very severe because of another fact. The fact is that Brazil and China use only 60% of freshwater for their agriculture irrigation purpose, whereas we use 90%, right? So because of this difference, we are more dependent on this particular resource, right? So this is how the resource crunch is visible from these plots. Now enough of problems, let's come to the solutions. So what are the solutions which are available to us now? Let's list them out. We will discuss them in detail in the coming slides. So first one is rationalize the water use by using micro irrigation. Micro irrigation means drip irrigation and sprinkler system, all those things. And we can also employ rainwater harvesting for recharging the groundwater level. And then policy tweaking is required because the faulty MSP regime and the procurement policy is hurting the agriculture sector. Then agriculture research and education is to be promoted, right, to improve India's standing in the agrotech sectors. Then market integration is required because we have to fight the fragmentation which is happening in the market, and it is actually hurting both the consumer and the farmer, right? So to improve the farm income, so that the farmer will have more income, and he will then invest in the productive technologies and better seeds, so that the productivity will come up. Then better prices to consumer can also be ensured. Now let's see these solutions in detail one by one. So what is the solution here? So what is the solution to this problem? The solution is micro irrigation. So if you see this picture, this is flood irrigation system. So you have to fill the entire field like a pond. It is completely filled with water, and this is highly wasteful. It is only required for certain crops like paddy, but this technique is employed for all the crops, mostly all the crops. And here you can see a sprinkler system. So this is highly efficient, and this uses very less amount of water. And micro irrigation basically comes in two flavors. There is a sprinkler system which is shown in the picture, and there is also drip irrigation. So in drip irrigation, what is done is perforated pipes are placed either above or slightly below the ground, and the water is dripped on the roots and stems of the plants directly, so that there is a a more precise irrigation to the crops. And it also reduces the consumption of fertilizer. So you are saving water first of all, and you are also reducing the consumption of fertilizer because of fertigation. So what is fertigation? Fertigation is a process of introducing fertilizer directly into the crop's irrigation system. So when you use flood irrigation system, this much water is there, and if you put a water soluble fertilizer, then a lot of fertilizer will not be absorbed by the roots because it is not reaching the roots. So when you use micro irrigation like drip irrigation system, then fertigation takes place. So there is a direct dispersal of fertilizer into the root system of the plant. Then there is also need of rationalizing subsidies on electricity, so that the wasteful usage of water can be checked. Then rainwater harvesting should be employed, so that we recharge the groundwater level also, right? And then consolidation of the ongoing irrigation schemes into one Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana is also proposed. Now whatever we have spoken till now is not theoretical. It is already tested in certain regions in the country. So let's see what are the results which we have experienced there. So this is a graph which shows percentage savings in cost of inputs for wheat, right? So if you talk about Haryana, then 49% saving was there in irrigation cost when micro irrigation was employed, and 45% saving in electricity, 39% saving in fertilizer, and there was a 2% increase in the productivity also. Now if you come to Chhattisgarh, then there was a 44% increase in the productivity because you were using less inputs, and output was increasing because of fertigation and other things, right? So these past experiences are actually reinforcing what economic survey is proposing. Now let's come to the second problem. Second problem is the MSP and procurement policy. So minimum support price was actually introduced in India to protect the farmer interest, because there is a lot of uncertainty in the prices of agricultural commodities. So what government is doing actually is, whenever the prices of agricultural commodities are falling below a certain level, then government is fixing a minimum support price on which government is ready to buy agricultural produce. So what market has to do is, it has to come up to this level, right, and it has to pay a little higher than this particular price. Otherwise all the farmers will be selling to the government, and these marketing agents will not have anything to sell, right? So this is how the government is maintaining the price certainty for the farmers, and it is protecting the interest of the farmers, right? But there is a problem that there is low level of awareness among the farmers, right? And there are only 23 crops which are protected under MSP and procurement policy, and out of those 23 also, this regime is actually effective only in wheat, rice, and sugarcane, cotton mostly. So these are the four crops which are which are at the limelight of this particular scheme. And because of this MSP regime, the pulses and oilseeds are getting neglected, and the condition is so bad that we are importing pulses from foreign countries, right? So what is the final outcome because of this faulty regime? So there are buffer stocks, we have extra stocks in paddy and wheat, but there is a shortage of pulses and oil seeds. Because of that, there are frequent price spikes, and also we are importing these commodities from other countries, which is putting a lot of pressure on current account deficit, and as our import bill is increasing. Then what is the solution here? So requirement is that we have to rationalize the MSP. So economic survey is actually proposing that the price signals which are given by the MSP should reflect the social cost and the returns rather than the private returns. So what are these social cost and social returns, and what are these private returns? See, whenever you grow a particular crop, you will be investing something. You will be investing something, maybe 100 rupees, right? And you will get some output out of that, maybe 10, 110. So this is your return. 110 rupees is your return. But because you are growing rice, you are putting a lot of pressure on the groundwater resources in your region. You are putting a lot of pressure on the lakes and reservoirs in your area, because you are using fertilizer, and that fertilizer will be flowing to the ponds, and it will lead to eutrophication and other problems, right? And these are some of the social problems which are arising because of that. So these are the social cost which you are paying, apart from these 100 rupees which is the explicit cost for you, right? And what are the social returns? See, some of the crops, like if you talk about the pulses, so pulses are leguminous plants, so they will fix nitrogen through their roots, because there is a bacteria rhizobium which is living in the root, and that will fix nitrogen in the soil. So these are known as nitrogenous crops. So this is very good for the soil, and these crops use less water and fertilizer. They fix atmospheric nitrogen naturally and helps keep the soil porous and also well aerated because of its deep and extensive root system. So because of all these benefits, these pulses are having some other returns. So apart from these 110 rupees, you are also getting some social benefits, some other benefits which are intangible and are visible only in long term, right? So these social costs and these social returns should also be highlighted so that farmers are aware about these. Now if you see this table, you have crops listed here. So if you talk about chickpea, that is chana, then you have return at market price. So this is a private return. So 2633 rupees per hectare is the return you are getting if you grow chickpea, right? But the return which is based on the social contribution is 5295, because chickpea is a leguminous crop, so it will be contributing to the soil, it will be using less water and fertilizer, right? So because of all that, the social contribution is 5295, and the difference between the social and the private return is 2622 rupees, is 2662 rupees. So there is a difference of 100% here, right? So you can see here the private returns are less, but the social returns are more. So currently all our decisions are based on the private cost. We are ignoring all these social costs, and because of that we are facing a lot of challenges, what we have seen recently in Latour, right? And similarly, if you see wheat, then wheat is having a very high return as compared to chickpea. It is having 36,244 rupees return per hectare. So this is the private return which we are talking about. But if you talk about the social contribution or the return based on the social contribution, then you are getting only 27,000 rupees, right? So there is a negative figure here. So there is a negative return of 9,227 rupees. So there is a difference of minus 25%, right? So wheat should get a lower weightage than chickpea, keeping in mind the social cost which we are incurring. So these are the social costs and returns. Now let's come to the third issue, agriculture research and education. So let's come to the third issue, agriculture research and education. So if you talk about the agriculture research framework in India, then it is called NARS, National Agricultural Research System, which comprises of ICAR, Indian Council of Agriculture Research, National Research Centers set up by ICAR, and agricultural universities. So these are the entities which come under National Agriculture Research System, right? But economic survey is actually saying that the setup is available, everything is there, but a lot of research is not happening. If you see, if you go into the history, then green revolution was the era which was the golden period for research and development in agriculture sector. But if you talk about today's scenario, then there is a very weak agro technology which is available in India, and this is because of the underinvestment and neglect which this sector has actually seen. And because of all this, so there's a slow rate of innovation, and there is also a lab to land disconnect which we talked about in the previous slides, right? So economic survey is actually telling that there are basically three issues which are behind this. And what are those? The first one is that agriculture education has a very weak enrollment. There is not a lot of demand for agriculture education. A lot of bright students are not going into agriculture education. Because of that, this sector is not growing. Another reason is the resource crunch which is being faced by the universities. They are lacking funding, faculty, and international collaboration and all those things. So because of that, the universities are also weak, and bright students are not getting into the agricultural education. So this is also a problem. Then investment in public agriculture research is to be augmented by encouraging the private sector participation, because a lot of investment is required in this particular sector. Then there is also a negative perception about the genetically modified crops, because of which we are facing a scenario where we are not able to increase the productivity to the required at a required pace, right? So we have to deal with that particular negative perception about the GM crops also. And the third issue in this, according to economic survey, is that performance indicators for scientists are not very clear. So they are not time bound to produce results or show results, and private sector participation is required in innovation sector, and they are to be properly compensated for that, right? So this will lead to rapid innovation. So this is what economic survey is proposing. And it is also saying that India's current spending on agriculture research is actually considerably very poor, and it is below that of China, and as a share of agriculture GDP it is even less than that of Bangladesh and Indonesia, right? So let's see how it is. So if you see this graph shows agriculture research and development spending in 2010, and this shows percentage of agriculture GDP. So India spends 31% of the GDP which is earning from agriculture. 31% of that is spent on R&D. Whereas if you see Malaysia, it is 97% and China is 65%, right? Even Bangladesh is higher than us, it is 38%. So this spending is to be increased, right? And it is to be channeled in the right direction along with the infrastructure support and other peripheral linkages to be made available. Now let's come to the fourth issue, that is market segmentation. So because of market segmentation, there's a lot of difference between what the producer is getting and what the consumer is actually paying. So there are a lot of mediators who are in between, and they are eating away all the benefit. So these two entities are still suffering. So in order to improve this particular situation, we have to focus on market integration. So this was actually seen in USA in late 19th century when the expansion of railroad was happening. So because of this, what happened was market integration, and people in a particular region were able to sell their produce in other regions also. So the local marketing guys or the marketing agents were not able to pressurize them to sell at a particular price. So this is not actually seen in India because there are a lot of constraints, because of which the farmer is actually bound to sell the produce to the local market only, and the local market, knowing that it has a monopoly over the local produce, so they are exploiting the farmers, and the farmer is getting poor gains. Now what are the main reasons for this segmentation in India? So first one is the remoteness and the connectivity. Second one is the local market power of intermediaries. So this is more important reasons than anywhere else. Third reason is local storage capacity and infrastructure which is available. The mandi infrastructure is not very good, right? So this is also another reason. And storage life of the crop also matters sometimes. For example, if you talk about sugar cane, after harvesting, the sugar content of the sugar cane reduces by 10% every 24 hours. So because of that, the farmer is actually dependent on the local buyer, on a local buyer, right? So these are some of the peculiar problems, but this is not common for all the crops. So these other issues are more pressing, and these can be tackled. So if these issues are addressed, then farm income will improve. So our focus should be there on market integration, and government is also taking some steps towards this particular direction. So we have finished the chapter. Now let's recap quickly. So initially we saw what is the importance of agriculture in India. We started from the history of agriculture, and then we saw how the contribution of agriculture was in 1950. It was contributing 50% to the GDP, and now it has reduced to 15%, right? Because our economy is evolving, and we are moving from a focus on the primary sector to the secondary and tertiary sector. Then we saw what are the issues which are faced by agriculture sector. We saw four issues which are faced. For example, resource crunch. Resource means the land is becoming scarce because of several reasons, and then the water is also a scarce commodity which is becoming scarcer. And then you have the imperfections. Then you have the imperfections in MSP regime and the procurement policy, right? Because of which certain crops are getting incentivized, and farmers are actually focused on that, and certain other crops like oilseeds and pulses are to be imported from certain other countries. Then backwardness in the agro-tech sector, because R&D is not happening at the pace which is required for India. And then market segmentation is another problem which is hurting both the farmer and the consumer. Then we saw what are the solutions here, the four solutions. The first one is the resource use rationalization has to happen, mainly in the sector of water. So we have to resort to micro irrigation, we have to use sprinkler and drip irrigation system, and rainwater harvesting is to be employed. Then we saw MSP and the procurement policy regime, where the social cost and the returns are to be highlighted apart from the private cost and private returns. Then we saw the agriculture research and education is actually to be augmented by private sector investment. Then lab to land connectivity is also to be strengthened. People in universities have to come to the farm, they have to study the practical problems of the farmers, and they have to devise a solution on those lines, right? So this is what we are talking about in lab to land connectivity. So market integration should also be our aim, because that will be beneficial for both farmer and the consumer. Farmer will get better income and the consumer will get better prices, right? So that's it guys, that's all from my side. If you like this video, please do like, comment, subscribe and share, and please do subscribe to the channel so that you get instant notifications whenever we upload a lecture. And if you have any topic in mind, please let us know, and please do comment on the videos, and please let us know what is your feedback, because that is the only way we know that whether we are utilizing our energy in the positive direction, or you want us to continue this particular series or not. Right? So thanks for listening. Thank you. Bye bye.